So AI is going to change the world. We've all heard it, we all know it. And today's conversation, we're going to dive deep into AI and the future of AI. Not just the AI we know today, ChatGPT, et cetera, but the next wave of AI, which is applications that will be built that will change our lives. It's going to be a great story today of heroes and villains to future worlds that we can't even really comprehend, and how to invest money in the world today to make money in this once in a generation change that's probably bigger than the internet, bigger than the industrial revolution. Paul Palmieri is here with me today. Paul has an incredible history. He has been an entrepreneur his whole life, all the way back to from delivering papers to copier sales, but more importantly, moving into the field of technology at Verizon, and then into the entrepreneurial world, starting a unicorn, Millennial Media, taking it public, going into the venture capital world, and then starting a venture capital firm himself, which is different from the others, not because they're in different investment cycles, but how they treat entrepreneurs. It's a fascinating conversation. It's wide ranging, but most importantly, if you're sitting down thinking, what does AI mean to my future? Relax, settle in. You're going to enjoy this conversation. Paul, welcome to From the Ground Up. It's great to have you here.
And it's great to be here, Leo.
Yeah. So we've known each other a long time, and I know a lot of your story. You've got an incredible background. I'm looking forward to kind of digging in, and I think what you're doing now is really pretty incredible. And I know what I hope today, what we get to do is not only talk about what we always talk about on From the Ground Up, right? Which is an entrepreneurial story, their journey, where they found success, where they had challenges, how they overcame those challenges. But today, you're in such a unique position in the venture firm that you founded that I think the folks that listen to this not only can pull from this conversation tidbits about being an entrepreneur, but also about the world that we're moving into. I mean, it's incredible. It's exciting. It's scary. It's got, this is like a big feature film here that you're going through
It
right now.
is. It is. There's science fiction. There's heroes. There's villains.
Right.
There's passion and perseverance. Something we call grit, of course.
Right. Right.
And it's a pretty incredible time.
Yeah. Yeah. It is incredible time. So, just to dig in a little bit. I mean, so you and I we both grew up in Jersey.
That's right.
So we know good pizza and good bagels.
We sure
And of course pork roll.
and pork roll, not Taylor ham.
Not Taylor ham, pork roll.
No way,
Sorry.
Taylor ham.
No, you wouldn't be here if you said Taylor ham.
That's right.
So from a same kind of background, right? From paperboy, just worked the whole time. I mean, I love your story. You had a rough time for a while with your dad, and he was disabled early, and so you were a gritty person from the beginning, right? You were out there just getting it done.
Yeah, I think growing up, myself, my siblings, we worked hard.
Right.
We were taught the value of hard work very early on. My dad was disabled. My mom worked a couple of jobs. Really don't know how she did what she did.
Right. Right.
But one of the things that did was it gave us the ability to really look at the big picture,
Right.
work hard, but not worry about the various setbacks
Right.
that happened in our daily life and our work. We really just had to focus on being grateful for
Right.
what we had,
Right.
being grateful for each other, and really keeping the eye on the big picture. And I can say that to me has been an incredible gift.
Yeah, and it's a gift not only from the standpoint of giving you the grit, right? We use that word a lot today, or giving you the entrepreneurial spirit. But I think that, you probably would agree with me. A lot of the generation today, and it's our fault, right? Because we parented the kids,
Right.
right? It's you just said it. I love what you just said, right? We weren't afraid of the fail. We were just out there and that's what entrepreneurs need. And I think that the entrepreneurs of today, there's more of a fear of failure instead of an embracing of failure. And And you through your career, I know you through your career, and I know you've faced challenges, you've had incredible successes, but you lived a true entrepreneur's life, which is I'm going to take risks. I'm going to take calculated risk. I'm going to take knowledged risk, and I'm going to fail, and
That's
I'm
right.
going to have challenges, and I'm just going to use that. I'm going to store that, and I'm going to come back out and be successful as a result of that. Do you feel like today, you deal with a lot of young entrepreneurs.
That's
Do
right.
you see that challenge that they kind of didn't? People weren't letting them fall down all that much as kids.
I would say that's absolutely true. I would say that the entrepreneurs these days that are having success,
Right.
some of them are highly technical. Some of them come from backgrounds that have some struggle.
Right.
One of the things that we kind of specialize in at Grit Capital Partners is an entrepreneur that's maybe built a couple of businesses and hasn't taken in on an investor before
Right.
and have done it from a bootstrap perspective. And
Right.
you really have to look for those things today because if the background comes in and you're looking at a pitch, for a new startup and do we seed fund this company, and what you have is a completely smooth path,
Right.
that's a little bit of a red flag
Yeah. Sure.
to us. That's right. And I think it's incredibly imperative on schools, colleges, programs around entrepreneurship that they really teach failure
Right.
and teach what kind of fuel that can give you because it's not just unleaded fuel.
Right.
It's unleaded premium.
Right. What about, this is a separate aside, and we'll get back to business here, but there's a great story, Michelle. I think I told you this one before. There's a great story. It's about a private school. I think it's in New Jersey. And when the kids go out for college acceptance, right, which is the big stressful event we've gone through with our kids around the same time. Every kid is afraid of the denial letter. And the school has a tree. It's called the denial tree. And every time they get denied from a college, they put the letter on the tree. And what the schools created was a culture of not being afraid of failing. And when I heard the interview of the head of the school, what he said was, as a result of that, kids were reaching the schools that they didn't think they could get in, and some of them were getting in, right? And they had these surprises, and so, he said every year, the one kid's trying to be the first one to get, like, denied from Harvard and get that thing up on the tree, and I love that story because it teaches you it's okay. Try things, take risk. You don't know what your boundaries are if you never get to the boundary.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, wow, what a great thing that tree idea
Right.
is because students need to know this and young people growing up, they really need to know this and they're not getting it in their everyday life. They're specializing in one sport that they become greater and greater at. They have feedback that is not in-person feedback from their friends. That's on
Right.
social media and, all of the above. They can have any meal they want delivered to
Right.
their door,
Oh, that's great.
so it's pretty wild. So the tree idea is a great idea. One of the things we look for at Grit is we're looking for this grit quality and we're looking for businesses actually in the tech businesses in the categories we invest in. We're looking for businesses where grit can have an outsized impact.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Well, so let's circle it back. So your whole life you've been very entrepreneurial, right? You paper route when you're young. You did the copier business like I did, which is
absolutely.
which is one of the greatest training grounds of all time. Uh,
Uh, we had the CEO of the copier company I worked for.
ah,
He went to a lot of Ritz-Carltons, and the Ritz-Carlton employees at the time had a motto that they would have to recite on demand, and so he gave us something to recite on demand, and it was incredible. Anytime we would see him, he would make us
what was it? You
recite it.
remember?
I do remember. Would you like to hear it?
Yes, I want to hear this.
I will persist until I succeed. I wasn't delivered into this world in defeat, nor does failure course in my veins. I am not a sheep waiting to be prodded by my shepherd. I am a lion, and I refuse to talk, walk, or sleep with the sheep. The slaughterhouse of failure is not my destiny. I will persist until I succeed.
Bang! I love that. Michelle?
Holy smokes, that was amazing, and, just for the record, we did not practice this, we didn't discuss this, this is right off the cuff. Way
Yeah.
to go, Paul Palmieri.
Yeah. Thank you.
Could we grab a recording of that? I want everybody here to recite that, on command going
That's
forward.
good. And so there's true good attribution there. That CEO's name was Gil Exler, and the author of that passage was Og Mandino. It's in the Greatest Salesman in the World book.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you go through this training. Here's a Jersey kid. He grew up. He had this, life of work and hard work. And you've spent some time in the technology world. You were at AT&T Bell. Um, and you started to learn the other side of your path, which is the technology side, right?
That's right.
And that was an interesting time at that point
Yeah, it
to
was a
be there.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time for sure. There were a lot of things. So this was Verizon Wireless in 2001 to 2005, the early days of the mobile internet,
Yeah.
early days of the app economy. In 2002, we launched app downloads,
Oh,
5 years before the iPhone and 6 years before Apple's App Store.
wow.
So we needed a business model. We had to have tools for developers to utilize. We had to bring these things to market and make consumers aware that you could do things on your phone other than talk.
Right.
And so, it was an incredible time. We did a lot with mobile games. We did a lot, we worked very hard on interoperating text messaging such that it would work carrier to carrier.
Right. Right.
It really was an amazing time. And we built a very big business very quickly there, about a $4 billion business in that 4 year
Right.
period of time. It was fast moving for
Fast,
sure.
fast learning.
Fast learning.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and for those out there who are our younger generation, at that time, I mean, the internet was really just happening. Nobody even knew how to use it. I mean, we were still dialing and and
Right.
you dialed into a really slow connection. It took forever to download things.
Yeah.
And so you were years ahead of where the internet was going. I think that, and as we start to talk about what you're doing today, this is all your process of learning entrepreneurship and grit, and then learning the technology and being able to see so far out in front of what's happening. I mean, it's almost like this perfect stepstone to where you are today, because you guys were pretty far ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it took a lot for a firm like Verizon Wireless to deploy 3G and 4G. It took a lot of capital expense.
Right.
And so there had to be a bit of an envisioning of what was going to be possible, even if the companies that helped with that vision, and there's a famous AT&T set of ads that helped to envision, what the world would look like. But it was just that. It was just envisioning it. And the fact was the tools were then made available, and then someone else built those tools with their own inspiration.
Right. And that's really so those ads are fascinating, right? And Michelle, we should play those. Because what they talk about is vision, right? How far ahead your organization was, and how long it took to actually have that vision come to fruition, and the work it took. And interestingly, it took entrepreneurs to take the vision of the big company. And that's really, I think, the key to where we are in AI today, right?
Absolutely.
Because the infrastructure of the internet, which was generational, right? The one of the greatest changes in history, which will only be surpassed by AI, right? And so you have this infrastructure build, and I think this always happens, whether it's the internet or it's mobile or it's automobiles or railroads, right? The infrastructure builders want to become the application developers, but they don't.
That's exactly right. What they're trying to do is get their infrastructure sold through. And one of the things they have to do is they have to show people what it is. So they try and create a single use case.
Right.
A single use case today would be like Claude or like ChatGPT. These aren't the underlying businesses of these firms. They're building these large language models. what we are using today in ChatGPT and Claude, aren't really the long-term product for those more infrastructure type companies.
But I think what's fascinating about it is when you look at what these ads were saying, right?
Yeah.
How long it took to finally get there, right? Like
Wow.
meetings on an island on a TV, and back then you were like, "No way," right? And then
That's right.
COVID hits, and suddenly Zoom is something. Matter of fact, let's play that. Let's play that, and I want to just do this, and then we'll come
Have
back.
you ever opened doors
I'm home.
with the sound of your voice?
Our card, please.
Carried your medical history in your wallet?
Your life's gonna be just fine.
So this is where we stand on the atrium
Or
space.
attended a meeting
I really like what you guys have been doing, but
in your bare feet?
I may have a few other ideas.
You will. And the company that'll bring it to you, AT&T.
Okay, first of all, if you didn't recognize it, that's Tom Selleck's voice. I mean,
It sure is. Yeah. There were not many television actors doing commercials back in those days. So
Yeah.
you could tell there was a big marketing budget attached.
yeah, Magnum PI laying it out. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But how fascinating is that, right? This is the future, and I want to get into what you're doing now, and I want to talk about AI. There's so much to dig into here because what those ads, and you have them on your website. I think they're brilliant. They're a brilliant conversation around what you're doing because you look at those ads and you look at all of those things that we do today and we take it for granted, but that was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so it took entrepreneurs to take vision and then create outcome and build it on an infrastructure. And that's exactly what Grit Capital is about. You're looking at this generational changing event, which is going to move faster than anything that anyone has ever seen, right? This is the biggest thing ever.
There's no question about it. As we sit here today, yesterday, Pinterest's earnings call, they talked about 25% of their current code that's running was written by AI. A couple of weeks ago, Satya Nadella from Microsoft said the exact same thing, except his number was 30 or 40%.
Wow.
Zuckerberg, same thing. So it's happening very, very quickly.
Right. And like every other infrastructure boom, massive amounts of capital pouring into this thing.
That's right.
Big bloated valuations on public companies as they grow, and their earnings are exploding, and their businesses are exploding, and they're executing, and yet the AI that's going to change our lives, that company may not exist today.
That company very well may not exist today.
Or there are companies that are starting today, which could be the Uber, right? Or the next advocate that changes our lives. I mean, that's your whole business, right?
I love that you just said Uber,
Right.
Because here's, one of the greatest CEOs in the US right now. When Uber was started, I remember it. I saw the pitch. Which was very interesting at a conference. But at the time, Qualcomm was hot.
Right.
It was the hottest, public stock out there.
The mobile generation, right?
Yes.
That was the next thing after the internet.
That's
Mobile.
exactly right. So, Qualcomm stock was hot. Apple had launched the iPhone a year prior,
Right.
had just launched the App Store. And what was just being seeded, thought of, and conceived at the time was a change in the way transportation worked. And if you asked investors at the time, what's the hottest thing in mobile, they would have said Qualcomm,
Right.
and they would have said Apple. They might have said a few others, but those companies didn't change transportation. Now, yesterday, Uber's market cap finished at 174 billion. What I can tell you is the companies that will be in AI, that will be the Uber style large names of the future, will all be coming in the application layer. The moats, the thing that protects a business and creates long-term strategic advantage in AI is not going to be the models. It's going to be the applications, the sticky workflows, and the utility that those workflows provide and how they change our lives, and change our work and change and give us actually the ability for our humanity to be even more useful.
Mm.
Because one of the things we're doing with humanity today is we're doing a lot of the tasks that computers could be doing.
Mhm.
So, it's a huge opportunity. The companies that will be the companies in AI of the future right now are in the very early stage, and we're excited. It's a lot of fun because we're seeing these companies as they come through, and we're seeing these founders with vision.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Amazon to internet, Uber to right to mobile, right?
Right.
And then ChatGPT isn't the it.
No,
It's a critical element to get to the it.
absolutely. The it will look at all of those large language models, whether it's Perplexity, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Llama or DeepSeek. How the application layer will look at those is something that's to be evaluated for its accuracy, its cost, its efficiency, but certainly as a commodity
Yeah.
in the future of AI.
So, so for folks, when you're talking to investors,
Yeah.
and so you go out and you're looking, well, you're talking to investors, but you're also talking to folks as an investor,
That's right.
right? And by the way, I mean, Grit Capital, um, I think is this extraordinary play, and all to be candid, I'm an investor in Grit Capital, proud
Thank
of
you very much.
investor in Grit Capital. I'm excited because as I think about where you are in this place, right? So, you're an entrepreneur, as we talked about in the introduction, right? You were a founder of Millennial Media, which was, really at that forefront of what was happening in mobile, and you created a unicorn and you went public, and you went to NEA. So you have this background as a venture capital person, right? So you take all this knowledge, your technology knowledge, your entrepreneurial knowledge, startup, going public, and you're talking to these young, fresh, um, some experience, but not really experienced for what they need to do from here,
Right.
right? And at this incredible moment, right? And so my question is, and I know Grit Capital, what you guys are all about is wrapping your arms, not just, hey, here's some money, let me know if it works out. Wrapping your arms around the entrepreneur and really developing them and the business,
That's right.
right? So in this moment, and I want to break it down to a couple places, but let's start with the entrepreneurs. Do they understand where they are? Because they don't have the knowledge from where you came from, right? And I know you can tell the story, but or are they just head down? This is, they're developers and they're grinding, and you're trying to keep lifting their chin up so they can see in front of them.
I mean, I would say it's a mix.
Okay,
And I would say we like multi-time entrepreneurs. There are some, great example is Speech Lab, that's doing speech-to-speech translation, which was one of those use cases you saw way back in that AT&T video. But live speech interpretation really changes how the world can communicate, and that multi-time founder definitely has a sense for the moment. Uh, I'll point to some other founders that we have. They're building in this moment with incredible vision that are clueless how big an opportunity
right,
stands before them,
right.
but they're executing in a way that is so incredibly on point and impressive, that really cuts through when we're evaluating.
Yeah. Is it moving away from Silicon Valley? Is it becoming New York and other areas with AI? Is it a different feel than the whole Silicon Valley run?
Yeah, I think absolutely, that's been a general trend in technology, and I don't know whether that's fed also by the Zoom culture and
Right,
the
right, right.
not in person sort of a thing. And certainly software developers love dark rooms
Right.
and dark basements, and so that has been very interesting. But yes, we still see a lot of deals in the Bay Area, but there's a lot happening in the industries we're investing in. So we're a specialist,
Right.
and we're a specialist focusing on applied AI,
Right.
but we specialize in those areas where we built companies as entrepreneurs. So fintech, commerce, marketing, and media. And those industries have a big foothold in New York,
Right.
in Boston,
Right.
LA, and so we see a lot there, there as well, and of course the Mid-Atlantic area, because I like to think Chris and I created a little bit of a hotbed
Yeah.
for hundreds of engineers that are working on ad tech here, and there's certainly been a games industry
Absolutely. Yeah, you absolutely.
thing here in Maryland as well. So and cyber and all of the other things I'm not even mentioning. We don't face we're not at all in healthcare. We're not at all in biotech, but obviously that's a huge thing too. Yeah.
So meaning Chris Brandenburg, who folks who follow from the ground up, we did a podcast and really focused a lot on what you and Chris did, and he spoke about you numerous times during that podcast about the amazing accomplishments you guys created at Millennial Media. But you're right, you created a tech culture in Baltimore, and what's interesting about that is where you guys were and what you created and what's happened in New York and Boston and LA. That's the Zoom culture, right? They're just cool places to be where young people want to be. So it's the opposite, right? Where I want to be this, so I got to go there. Now it's I'm here, so this is where it will be.
Right. And I think, very early on, even at Millennial Media in the product and technology organization, there were some rules of the road forming around if someone were on video,
Right.
if one were on video, then the rest of those who were on video were not in a conference room.
Right.
So that if one was a one-to-one view, all were a one-to-one view. And there were a lot of things culturally that were done there that were interesting. We got an idea once from Pandora that had created a thing called the window. So you just kept the video feed up and running. So you could talk to your colleague in another office of the company and you could say, hey, I'll meet you at the window. You just go to the window and there they are.
Awesome.
So, there were a lot of things innovated there and, it was amazing.
So for the folks out there who are going to listen to this, right? So we hear about AI, right? We hear about it through the lens of ChatGPT.
Right.
Interestingly, just the other day, Google stock was down 8% because the obvious came out. It's funny, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago, right? Do we need search? Right. And suddenly everybody looked at Google and went, oh my God, do we need search? Do I need 12 ads every time I ask for a simple question and five other choices that may not relate, and as opposed to a personal agent? There's so much happening, and that's what people know. But for example, you just said language to language, right?
Right.
It's not going to be long where the whole language barrier around the world is gone.
That's right.
It's gone.
That's right.
You have an earpiece, people talk, you hear it in English, and the possibilities here are so extraordinary. How do you, when you talk to investors, so you have the two pieces we started to say, you're investing in, so you have to talk to the developers. You have to tell them about your value, about what Grit's going to do, about the future, give them vision, and I want to talk more about that. And then you have investors. What would you tell, what are you telling investors? What are you telling the public, or cocktail hour, somebody walks over, and says, right after you got done singing and playing the box, Paul's a hell of a musician and
Forgot about that one. That was a good memory, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good memory.
Yeah.
So what are you telling them about AI? How do you describe its potential? Because it's beyond most people's comprehension.
Yeah.
Especially as what you're developing starts to take hold.
Yeah.
And how do you talk about, and I talk about this all the time, when it was the internet or cars or railroads or the Industrial Revolution, the fear is about what we know, but the solutions are about things that aren't here yet.
That's right.
Right. So how do you talk about that? How do you conceptualize that for folks
Yeah.
so that they understand where we're going with AI and quantum computing for that matter?
Yeah. I mean, what I would then quantum's a whole other thing, but what I would say is we start with the things that people know. Like there's been an incredible recent development in AI called Model Context Protocol. It allows the models to talk to each other. And
Frightening.
and Anthropic came out with this last year, and just maybe 6 weeks ago, OpenAI and Microsoft agreed to have their systems communicate via this protocol.
Right.
It's a really, really important moment, and it's an important moment because computers don't do context like humans.
Right.
A human could be a Yankee fan, say the Yankees stink, and still buy a 10-game package.
Right.
How does one, in their own mind, as
So I'm a
human—
Giants fan, so I know that emotion. So
Oh, well, recently, all kinds of difficult emotions there, but anyway, not like the Jets, though.
no, no.
But anyhow, you have as a human the ability to pull in short-term and long-term information.
Right.
This new thing that has come out, Model Context Protocol, it's going to allow the AI models to have what's called chain of thought reasoning. Now, this still isn't intuition,
Right.
but it is inference and it is reasoning. And so I think when talking to investors, we have to break it down. We have to break it down to stories like the Yankees, or the notion of pausing a Netflix movie and then resuming, but remembering what happened previously in the movie.
Right.
And these are some of the breakthroughs. So I think you not only have to break it down and talk about how some of these technologies could open up opportunity, but you also need to look to the past. And there are such great examples from the cloud, from mobile. Let's talk about the cloud for a second. Obviously, AWS, Oracle, Microsoft,
Salesforce.
yep, big movers in the cloud. But then you also had a Salesforce
Right.
that was on the application side of the world,
Right.
that wasn't the cloud infrastructure,
Right.
but they envisioned what could be. HubSpot, another great example. Plaid, another great example of verticals, that really took advantage in applying that cloud infrastructure and those cloud services that were put out there. So I think we're lucky in a way that we've had the internet happen and cloud happen and mobile happen, and we have so many examples that are out there. And so that's generally really what we try to do. And I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for AI for that reason. I will say, you know, uh, uh, the venture capital world can sometimes be like lemmings, where there's just a bunch of money that gets piled into this or that.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
And so, so what's happening today? Everybody's talking about NVIDIA. Everybody's talking about the large language models.
Right.
And there's a massive amount of money that's going into AI infrastructure,
Right.
horizontal. And that's great. But there's only so much room that there's going to be in AI infrastructure.
Right.
Where the real benefit is when you look at a role in an industry. Like, for instance, in the consumer packaged goods world, in manufacturing, there's this thing called the demand planner.
Right.
What does the demand planner do? And how could AI assist that demand planner to be thinking more strategically, more with intuition, and spending their time doing that than spending their time doing all of the number crunching and research and all of that. So you really, in AI, it's like starting from, oddly enough, the ground up,
Right.
from a role, and envisioning really what could that be. And if there's a software market that existed in the cloud for us, a solution that's pre-AI, you really have to look at the total addressable market for that and add what you think the labor unit offset is going to be around the applied layer of AI. So, take demand planning, for instance, and, we're looking for a demand planning
Right.
play ourselves because we're in commerce. We have an understanding that this could be a lucrative field. Well, in 2030, the demand planning cloud software market's supposed to be $15 billion. In the same year, in the US, we will pay demand planners between salary and benefits $11 billion. So 15 billion market for the cloud software, 11 billion market for the labor. And the question is, how will AI offset and enhance that labor? Might you say half of the labor would be offset? Now it's a $21 billion market, but you also have to look at the other side, which is, what are those humans going to be doing that's more strategic, that's more human,
Right.
that's then driving the top line, and what then is the overall value? So I think it's a complex field to invest in, and you really have to have a perspective on how to measure these potential markets.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and when we think about over time, and we think about valuations and markets and costs and labor transitions, right? Even going from an agricultural society to the industrial revolution, right?
That's right.
And if you look back at history, the you know the workers who were doing really hand generated work, they were protesting when they started bringing industrial machines, right? They wanted to burn the buildings down because it was going to destroy their life. And of course, that exploded the productivity of our country and really catapulted us forward. And the same thing with technology and the internet, every step of the way. I mean, how many people does Google and Meta employ, right? Those are all things that there was no such thing as a Googler or what a Googler is doing
Right.
in 1999. And so that's the interesting part of this. If you take 50% of the people out of the demand planning or anything else, accounting, right? You can't sit with an accountant for a long time and get a deep conversation because they're always doing tax data, right? So as you pull those people away, they become productive in a deeper way.
That's right.
And or maybe there's demand planners who would be great something else's that they can now go do.
That's
I
right.
think that's something that people miss. I think that's right in front of us, but they're also scared. Everybody. There's a lot of fear out there that this thing's going to move so fast. I mean, we hear things like, these language models are starting to learn and we don't know how, right? Or the speed of this is going to be exponentially large and it's going to get past us. Or like, how do you address the villain in the room as well as the hero, right? The hero is productivity, it's deeper engaged lives, it's deeper engaged work experiences, it's potentially moving labor up the ladder. All of that is the hero, and the villain is this fear of replacement and us
Yeah.
not finding that next. How do you think about that with AI?
I mean, the way I think about it with AI is, I think I would say that the next 5 years are going to really show us as humans not to fear what AI could become, because there are things that AI doesn't do that humans do.
Right.
There's so many things, and so
So what are those?
well, intuition
Right.
is a great thing.
I
And
knew you were going to say that, by the way.
why?
Intuition. There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. So there's these human characteristics.
Yeah.
And so what is the villain then? Right? If a lot of the villain or the villain that people are afraid of really isn't the villain, right? What is the villain? What keeps you up at night with AI?
I mean, the villain is ignoring that AI is going to be here and is going to be a part of the future.
Right.
The villain is not engaging today with AI. The villain is a 35 to 54-year-old male or female in the United States that is not spending a half an hour or an hour a week interacting with AI, because there's going to be a need to be fluent in this.
Right.
And young people will be natives, just like our young people, our families, as they've grown up, they were mobile natives. The young people are going to be AI natives. And so to me, the villain is lack of engagement, because this is incredibly important, and it's incredibly important that people keep up with what it is, because it's moving very, very quickly.
Yeah, that's That's right. So the hat maker, right, saying I make the best hats and holds on for a while, or the encyclopedia salesman is the best encyclopedia salesman in the country,
Absolutely.
right? You gotta move on. You gotta move with this,
Yeah.
and no, that's great insight. That's great insight. So let's flip to the other side now. So at Grit, right? So you're looking at the world from the hero side, right? And you're looking at the world and you're saying, okay, so this big thing just happened, right? And it's just this thing is out there and it's moving fast and it's learning fast. And my job is to find and work with the people who will take the big thing and bring it to me, the person,
Yeah.
right? Or to the business and
That's right.
generate productivity. And it's an absolutely massive endeavor, right, that you guys are taking on because
That's right.
not only do you have to find what every other venture capitalist has to find, right? Good people, good business people, good at their craft, right? Builders, developers, know their market, marketing, finance, whatever the case is, who you have confidence can build a business, at scale. But also, you have to envision the business that's not there yet.
That's
Right?
right.
And
That's right.
that's what makes Grit this incredibly unique thing. There's some infrastructure things. Like one of the things I love that you did at Grit was you didn't do what everybody else does when they start a venture capital firm, which is just grab a bunch of money, try to go put things that give you a whatever, MOIC of 5, and just whatever dies, whatever successful. You've built a whole team of people to do
Yes.
this. You've invested a lot of money at a very early stage to create a support infrastructure
That's right.
for these folks. So, okay, you built the infrastructure, you understand, you've been there, right, at the change of mobile,
That's right.
and so now you're out. So now talk to me about how you're talking to the developers. How do you execute and find somebody that fits all those points
Yeah.
and manage that with trying to envision something that doesn't exist yet? That's such a great endeavor you're
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're really looking for is we're looking for a visionary founder,
right.
a company that has more than one founder, of which one of them is a technical co-founder.
That's interesting.
Uh,
Kind of like you and Chris.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I think, it's just a great combination. But how many pitches do we see that we pretty much dismiss right away where you have somebody who's a great business person and they have an idea and they're outsourcing the building of their technology? And I say, hey, if I were building a dental practice, the last thing I would outsource is dentistry.
Right.
Right. And so you need a technical co-founder
Right.
along with this go-to-market founder CEO.
Gotcha.
So as a firm, we like the founder CEO that's a go-to-market founder CEO.
Gotcha.
Not like we won't have technical CEOs. We will have them and encounter them in the portfolio. There's no question about it. But we're looking for vision. We're looking for indicators that there's a large subsector that can be addressed with AI
Right.
that's large enough to build against. We're looking for pieces of traction that rhyme with things that we've seen with pattern recognition before. And we need to know that this team is also going to be compelling raising money
Yeah.
because
That little detail.
if they're building the market leader, and we're only investing in companies where we think they can be one of the top 3, if not
They could
the
be Uber.
market leader.
They could be Uber.
The Uber. That's
Right.
exactly that's what we're looking for in this layer of
Right.
AI. We need to envision them being compelling in that way. Now, if we were a later stage investor, and this is seed, and by the way, at seed, it's a little bit, you're taking on a little bit more risk, but it's different kinds of risk. Later stage, you're
It's also
taking
different kinds of returns.
absolutely
Yeah.
much higher returns, and you're taking different kind of risk. In the Series A, Series B, you're taking timing and valuation risk for sure. But we look at valuation risk. We don't like valuation risk. We like company building risk because that's what we know as entrepreneurs ourselves. That's what we can work with. And so all of those things come together in someone and their team that has built something incredibly interesting. They're early to market with this product. They're in revenue for sure, and we've got a belief and we have a point of view already on that sector or that subsector. Again, our specialization. So there are generalist investment firms and there are specialist investment firms in our same stage.
Right.
Uh, but some of the things we'll see in the markets where we're thought leaders or we build companies or whatever that is, we can see a company that looks to us and an opportunity that looks to us like emerging consensus that to a generalist would look like completely non-consensus.
Right.
And so it gives us an angularity and I might say a risk mitigating factor in the early stage.
And that's what's different too about your situation. Whereas in the venture capital world, even though they may say something different in a sales presentation, it's let me invest in 20, and if I hit 3 big, I
Yeah.
generate a rate of return, and the other 17,
That is
maybe I get my money back on a few.
that is the wrong model.
Right, right, and that's one of the reasons we were so attracted to your structure, your firm, because no, we're going to dig in and we're going to make these businesses successful.
That's right. And so we help once we make an investment, or right before we wire, we come to agreement on a set of milestones that will help them raise their next round faster.
Right.
And we measure those things, but it's an agreement between us and the founding team. We then help with all kinds of things from talent to go-to-market strategy, fundraising strategy, things like how to build a missionary culture, because ultimately culture and team is what wins. And so we then bring all of these playbooks to bear to help our entrepreneurs once we invest. And admittedly, some of them are multi-time founders and some need a lot of these things and some need less of them, but they all need the number one determinant in the success of a startup, which is talent.
So let me ask you this question then. Do they know your value when you talk to them? So, with Verdance, we pride ourselves on being an independent advisor, right?
Right.
And having, an extensive platform. And but if I don't, if the folks that are looking to do business with us don't understand that, then the value is lost in the
That's right.
conversation. These are startup entrepreneurs. Do they understand they haven't been down that road?
Right.
Do they know the value? Do you feel like they get it, or you think some do, some don't? That's just walk away from those who don't.
I mean, I think, to our credit with branding,
Right.
a lot of them do because
Good.
it's in our name.
Right.
Right. And, grit is in our name. And often their first interaction with us is followed up by us getting deep with some of their current customers
Right.
and talking to people in the industry,
Yeah.
doing them a meaningful errand
Right.
prior to us even making an investment. If we have some interest and some thoughts about, do we want to be investing in this entrepreneur? Because not only does it give them value, it shows them our values.
It's interesting because we have, right, Michelle. We have the same core philosophy, right? We put out a lot of content, a lot of education, and it's funny. We were talking to a recruit not long ago, and in the meeting, very smart guy, love the guy, but in the meeting he said, well, let's just say he has information, right? And he says, I like to just tell him I have the information, and then they come to me for it. And I said, well, that's interesting because we give away all the information.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
and that way they come to the expertise, not the information.
That's
Right.
exactly
And,
right.
and so that seems like that's exactly what you're trying to do.
That's exactly right. And I would say, even early in our conversations, we ask people what grit means to them.
Yeah. Good.
Right. We have a great entrepreneur that we backed that had a great exit last year, Chris Bevilacqua. He says, no one is going to outwork me. The best you'll do is tie. And he's like, that's what grit is.
Out came the money.
Yeah.
Out came the money. So, yeah. So, all right. In the world we're in today, We've got massive valuations, which have eased back a little bit here recently in AI, publicly traded AI stocks.
Yeah.
Bigger, let's say, the private publics, the ones that are still private, but they have so many
Stripe.
investors. It's the same thing as a public company. It's just not listed every day.
That's right.
So the valuations on all those are pretty significant, right? And so you have a couple things that I think you have to fight. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You're in a very hot market, so there's a lot of money paying attention to it, and valuations at the top level are very, very high. So how do you manage those two things in your process? Are you getting reasonable valuations
Yep.
relative to its, I mean, again, if you overpay 25% at a seed, that doesn't matter,
Sure.
right? Because it's exponential potential.
Right.
But you don't want to overpay so much that it inhibits it. And so how do you compete to get the deal?
Yeah.
And then how do you get the deal at a number that makes sense given where we are in the marketplace? Is that
Yeah.
a fair question?
That's a fair question. And what I would say is we're very particular about the percentage ranges that we're going after. We are not as comfortable taking valuation risk as we are company building risk, as I said before. And deals can get hot, and we'll pass on some deals
Okay.
if they do.
Okay.
So and yet we might give chase here or there. It all depends on the situation itself.
Right.
What I would say as a general matter is at seed, things are not as crazy as they are at the A and the B.
Right.
And certainly these pre-IPO
Right. Crazy.
areas, there's a lot of valuation growth,
Right.
but I'm not going to call it froth,
Right.
because AI is the industrial revolution
Right.
changed.
Right.
It's not the industrial revolution, it's the human computer revolution.
Right.
And it's bigger
Bigger.
or as big as the industrial revolution. So I don't want to call yes, those late stage valuations are high.
Right.
Yes, things are a lot more rational at seed.
Right.
And we're happy that that's the case. And we're very disciplined to our percentage ownership ranges. But what I would say is I don't necessarily view what looks like crazy valuations at the late stage pre-public so crazy.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And we, when we're talking to recruits, when we're in the M&A space, right? When we're always out in the M&A space looking for good advisors, and the wirehouses are good RIAs who maybe want to join a firm that can help them grow, just like you. Not as sophisticated as you, but just like you, and
Actually pretty darn sophisticated.
and so when we're out there, what we're always focused on is telling them, don't, because right now the market's hot in the wealth management space. So, you go to an auction and everybody's just throwing money, and it's kind of the same thing. Or the venture firm that's just willing to throw any multiple versus the partner. And we always tell these folks, don't focus on the value today, focus on the value in 5 years, right? Because it's not, this is just, if you're the right frame of mind, and we're looking for growers,
It's base camp.
right? So I feel like, and I'm curious if these kids have a better, I call them kids, by the way, if I just called you a kid, don't be insulted. I've got a lot of snow on the roof here, so I'm one of the old guys. So, if these young entrepreneurs, do they get it? Because what we find is, when the money gets in front of somebody's face, it's hard for them to see through it to the other side. But maybe that's industry specific as opposed to what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I would say, the most recent deal we did, multiple term sheets, large multi-stage firm. We competed against another seed stage firm, but that's storied and been around for 20 years. And the entrepreneur chose us and took our term sheet, which had a lower valuation than the highest term sheet that they
Great.
had.
See, that's smart.
But I think they can sense that they're about to be on this journey,
Right.
and there's an opportunity to be on the journey with somebody who's walked in those shoes before,
Right.
and somebody knows a lot of the unknown.
Right. So, okay, couple questions. So It's not lightning round because I don't want you to answer it in one word. But a couple interesting conversations and questions. How are you applying AI in Grit to your business?
Yeah. I think for us, we're looking for various advantages that come from AI for the business of venture capital. So the first thing we're looking to do is an information advantage. And so we have some AI that looks at all of the presentations that we get, immediately rules out some of them, and sends notes back that says, hey, this is outside of our thesis, or you're wanting us to invest in a region of the world where we don't invest. We just invest in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. So initially, it's about screening, and that's more of like an information advantage and potentially a time advantage for our team. Second, we're looking for an analytical advantage. And the analytical advantage comes from what are those things, what are those characteristics that we look for, and can we spot them early, right? And so this isn't a process of excluding opportunities because we're doing that as the partners beyond this information stage. Now we're into this analytical stage, and what's happening is there's highlighting of things that we like, that are thematic for us, that
Right.
fit one of our points of view, that look at one of these labor unit offsets that we're looking to explore. The next one is sort of like a behavioral advantage. So it's not ready for prime time, but we're building an AI that sits in the investment committee meeting with us and plays curmudgeon.
Nice.
And
You mean I'm not needed anymore? Damn it.
so we so that's the behavioral advantage, and then sort of the last thing is a market advantage. And with that, we're taking in a number of data streams
Right.
once we've made an investment, and we're adding value to our companies by giving them environmental information about their industries or key movements, et cetera, et
And
cetera.
that's all in place of, a young person sitting there just grinding and grinding and grinding. Now you can have those young people doing more productive things.
That's exactly it. And for us, it's not like, Shopify CEO recently put out a memo that said, you can't have any more headcount unless you prove that that particular headcount couldn't be done by AI. And
Right.
it's not that way for us. Actually, we still are engaging with a young analyst role, for instance. But that young analyst using all of this information, analytical, behavioral, and market advantage is able to be much, much more effective
Right.
and much more effective at using their human characteristics. Again, I think this theme we're going to see over and over.
Well, you're in a human
again.
business.
That's
Right.
right.
You got investors on one side, and people look at Great Capital and say, okay, so you're an AI venture firm. No, it's a still people firm, right?
Absolutely.
You're appealing to the entrepreneur on one side and the investor on the other. That's all it's about.
That's right.
You're connecting capital.
That's right. Connecting capital and doing it in a way that reduces risk because
Right.
of our sector expertise, reduces company building risk because of our expertise as founder CEOs,
All right. Yeah.
$2 billion worth of exits
Right.
as operators. So, that's the real differentiation. Not that we're focused on applied AI. Of course, we think that's incredibly topical, and that's our thesis. But that's not the differentiator for why we do it. So you're dead right. It's still about humans, and it is fundamentally a human thing that we do.
All right. Question 2. What's the coolest AI application that you use in your personal life?
Uh, Best AI application I use in my personal life. What I would say is, uh, I am a student of commerce,
Mhm.
and we have a portfolio company where we have some data access to this portfolio company, and they're doing very interesting things in commerce with AI.
Right.
And so I'm a little nerdy, and so I do that. But if I have to give you like the consumer thing that I do on the side, what I would say is I'm a big fan of Claude.
Okay.
I think Claude.
For the folks out there who don't know what Claude is?
Oh, Claude is the ChatGPT counter, sort of like competitor put out
Okay.
by
Okay.
Anthropic,
Okay.
which has a big investment from Amazon.
Right.
And I use Claude in an interesting way in terms of building plans for events and
Neat.
things that we do in the firm.
Neat.
Personally, I think outside of work, I think some of the things that are really interesting. We like to when we have a big holiday at the beach, and we have family coming in town. We like to build a schedule for the weekend of
Right.
all kinds of events and things along those lines, and we're using tools that allow us to communicate with everybody in an exciting way.
Ah.
How all of that is going to come together for the weekend.
Oh, that's a good resume of so Michelle is our resident AI expert.
Excellent.
She actually she is as developed an AI person as I have seen. So what's your big question?
Well, I've been so
And
interested.
don't ask him how to make me look younger on podcasts.
Well, I wrote down curmudgeon, like
Oh.
the I think that's a great topic. But this has been, and I say this, Leo, and I know I sound like a broken record, but this is my favorite podcast that we've done. It's just been so engaging, and I've learned a ton. But I think that something that weighs, you go to the bookends of the conversation around AI, and one of those is what's the best and what's the worst, and this could be good or bad. When do you think, and if you could look in your crystal ball, will we hit parity or singularity or whatever they're calling it, where AI sort of matches human intelligence?
I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of things. I mean, no one could have predicted that we would have not taken, say, 5 years from OpenAI's original launch of ChatGPT to go into models of inference and models of reasoning, and those things are moving along quite nicely. But the brain is incredibly complex. The human brain is incredibly complex, and what I would say is, I think this is a 10-year plus off sort of a thing for artificial general intelligence, and I think it's something that's going to look very different by the time we get there, because our humanity will be different
Right.
based on what we're using in the other parts of AI. And so, to an extent, I do believe that singularity will be chasing goalposts that will be very, very difficult to get to.
Right. So my last kind of follow-up question. It's back to the industry.
Yeah.
So China just had a big announcement, and they came out with their own large language model, and they said, and it's a dubious claim. They only spent a few $1,000,000. I know I know China's numbers are always spot on and accurate, right?
Oh, yeah.
Every time.
Very crisp.
Yeah, very crisp. And so they came out and they said, okay, we have our own large language model, and we spent virtually nothing to develop it, and we can develop at virtually nothing. And the stock market, the tech side, the AI side got beat up for a week or so, and then it seemed to dissipate. But in talking with you, you said that was an interesting moment, not in a negative way, but in a positive way for the
Abs
AI development world. Can you talk about that? Because
Yeah.
that's that was pretty surprising. You were like, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, first, what I would say is, you really have to look at how expensive is it to build on top of AI, to really build what will be the biggest things in AI, which again will be equivalent of things like Uber and transportation,
Right.
Instacart, and all of the things that were built in mobile. But in order to do that, you have to have ready access to models that don't hallucinate. You have to have ready access to great training data, and you have to have cost efficiency. And so the DeepSeek moment did a few things. Number one, it really showed that open source has a role to play here. And so advantage Llama and Meta in
Yeah,
this for sure.
I don't think I said DeepSeek. I was beating around the bush, but for those who aren't familiar with it, DeepSeek is the large language company
Yeah.
that came out and made these claims and really shook up the market a bit. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. I think, what it really meant was that the large language model business, while it will be foundational and a key piece of infrastructure for AI, it will be commoditized.
Right.
And in one shining moment, in a couple of days, in January, I think it became clear to the world that the place to be investing isn't in large language models and all of that, but the place to be investing is the applications, the verticalized tooling, industry by industry, or consumer use case by consumer use case. And so it's been an incredible moment because it's been an accelerant to the developments that are happening on top of.
Wow, that's fair. So, is there, having been an entrepreneur, being in the world of building, now being in the AI world, you know what your targets are, right? You know your markets that you're trying to go after. And I know when you're a venture capitalist, you're out, you're trying to find great people, great ideas, great business models, and scalability. But given the moment we're in, is there do you go the other way? Do you start are you looking out there saying, "Hey, this hasn't been addressed, this area of the market. We should go find somebody who can do this and do it backwards," because that's not really the venture capital way, right?
Yeah.
That's left to the entrepreneurs, but you have a different model. You have a team of entrepreneurs.
That's right. And we definitely have points of view. We have a point of view, for instance, on fintech. There's a lot of changes in wealth management. Democratization of alternative investing, for instance, is an incredible theme that can be, we think, accelerated by AI. In the insurtech space, we think how underwriting happens and how what I'll say is like fidelity to regulations and how they evolve and how quickly the insurance industry could adapt utilizing AI. Super interesting for us. In media and entertainment, something like sports and sports technology, we think there's interesting angles that are in there. In marketing and media, new things around measurement, around new methods to help marketers do their jobs.
Right.
So really, really interesting. And by the way, we think there's for instance, in that marketing area, it's a very different opportunity potentially in the communications and PR area than it is in the ad spending, advertising area.
Creativity, right.
So very interesting. And you're right. We do have a set of points of view, and those points of view not only are rooted in what we think the market opportunity is and what the disruption opportunity is, but also rooted in who's doing those tasks today
Mhm.
and what is the cost to companies or to users, whether that be money or time, in doing those things today, and how could that potentially be there. And so and again, it's not like we're going to incubate these ideas and spin out these companies. We still are looking for entrepreneurs, but we're going to where they are and trying to find those opportunities. And I think a lot of those opportunities come to us again because we're sector experts and
Right.
and people know that we operate in these areas.
Right. So, well, I have one more question. So, at the beginning of every major shift, right? A shift of humanity, right? Industrial revolution, as we talked about, internet, TV, radio, etc. There's a there's an infrastructure build, but then when we talk about application, was your whole thesis,
Yeah.
there is a flurry of wealth building in the application side that lasts for a while. And then after that, it settles in, and there's still unicorns that come along the way now after the fact, but really it's that first wave. How long is that wave for AI? You're the segment you're going into, is that a 3-year time? Is it a 5-year? Is it a 10-year period? What's the wave in front of us?
I mean,
Because the internet, everybody thought, we missed it after 2002. everything was going down. We missed it. And that obviously was not correct, right? That went on for a long, long time. What's the wave?
I mean, I think this is a once in 4 generations opportunity.
Okay.
I think there'll be a first wave here in the next 5 to 10 years
Okay.
where I think the most valuable companies are at the seed stage today.
Right.
And then beyond that, I think things will layer on top. And if
Right.
you think about the Industrial Revolution, television wasn't created the day the Industrial Revolution happened. Robotics in manufacturing
Right.
didn't happen the day people started using an assembly line. And so there's a layering of these things over time. And so we look at it as a 100-year window, or once in 4 generations. We look at what are those pieces, what's going to happen over the next 10 and 25 years.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you could blow your mind, right? When you think about AI and you add, quantum computing, which is scary, and you put all that together and you think, okay, space, you think about the combination of bio and tech together, you think about change of medicine, you think about the change in and how we live our lives, I mean, it's so vast.
It is vast.
It is so vast, and that's your point, right? The beginning of the Industrial Revolution, what it created went on for 80, 100 years. I mean, it kept changing everything.
Absolutely. Reminds me of a funny story. A friend of mine, Mark McDowell, one of my mentors, told me. He said when he was 8 years old, he went to his parents and he had written a letter to the patent office asking them to please provide him a list of all the things that hadn't been invented yet. And his parents let him send the letter. And but it's a great story.
Right.
But that's exactly where we are.
That's where we are. Yeah, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up.
That's great.
So, Paul, I think this was just a tremendous conversation. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I think where you are is such an exciting space. And God, I mean, what an opportunity in front of you, and you and your team are the right team to take advantage of.
Well, thank you, and I think you and your team are pretty great too.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And so, thank you very much, everybody, for listening to From the Ground Up. Tremendous conversation with Paul, and the founder of Grit Capital. And what he's doing in the AI space is not only innovative, but as we said, it's generationally impacting our lives. So we want you to continue to like us. But take it from here, Michelle. Hit the alarm bell.
Subscribe and never miss an episode. And if you want to see the entire list of From the Ground Up episodes, go to fromthegroundup.fm. And if I could, Paul, I would love you to visit the grit.vc website because they've got some really, really cool stuff happening over there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, that would be great. And by the way, we hope you like our new setup. This is you're the first one in our new modern chill environment.
It is very stylish and it is very comfortable.
Yeah. And by the way, Paul said he was in Jake Paul's podcast room, and ours is just as good.
You bet.
I love it. All right.